If this isn't a Midwestern American city, then God didn't make little green apples, and it don't rain in Indianapolis in the summertime. Indianapolis on the surface is completely typical of its part of the world, with a normal quota of churches and monuments. Once each year, however, Indianapolis is different, when the quiet of the surrounding farms is shattered by this sound. The Indianapolis 500. What does it mean to win it? Listen to the drivers.
Well, it would mean a lot, but I wouldn't be unhappy if I don't win. The reason I say that, I've had my chances 3 times and enjoyed each and every one of them, so you can't be too piggish about a thing like this.
In many ways, it's the biggest everything, really. It's not only the biggest race, it's the biggest paying race. It's the toughest one to win, and a lot of times it's the biggest pain in the neck. I'd like to win it and get it over with.
I would hold it very dear if I could run it 200 laps and really give it a fighting chance at winning this race.
This was the one he wanted more than anything else in the world. And here it comes, Mario. The checkered flag of victory. He's done it. Two of the most nervous people in this racetrack, especially for the last 10 laps, Andy Granatelli and, of course, Mario's wife. Andy, the Granatelli jinx is dead.
You know it always was.
Andretti, a name so intertwined with racing that the two seem nearly inseparable. This all began with the patriarch of the family, Mario Andretti, has an incredible career winning practically everything on planet Earth there is to win in auto racing. Daytona, Le Mans, Monza, Sebring, Pikes Peak, and of course, Indianapolis. 1969 would be the year he accomplished that feat, driving for Andy Granatelli and his STP team. Mario would achieve victory quite decisively, leading over 100 laps and beating icons like Dan Gurney, Bobby Unser, Peter Revson, Mark Donohue, and of course, A.J. Foyt. Mario at the time was a spry 29-year-old, with a long career still ahead of him. 1969 was perhaps the year that underlined the legacy he was about to build. 9 wins across the USAC season, the season championship, and named by ABC the Athlete of the Year. For 1970, he returned to Indy with Andy Granatelli. He qualified row 3, and overall showed nothing of the pace he had the year prior. On top of being slow, Mario was plagued by loose bodywork, a punctured rear tire, both of these causing their own separate untimed pit stop. Mario also reported persistently that the car was just off, resulting in the end with an 8th place finish. For the next year, absolute chaos would be on display.
The view you are watching is live. It's the scene right now at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The sun will set soon, and the huge amphitheater of motorsport is an almost silent world of cooling asphalt and lengthening shadows. What a contrast to just a few hours ago. More than 300,000 people were here then, straining for a better look at the 33 cars poised for the start of the world's most famous race. Poised for the start of the Indianapolis 500 1971, that orange car on the inside on the pole is Peter Revson. The blue car next to him is Mark Donohue, and Bobby Unser on the outside. The green flag is out. They're underway. Going into turn 1. Oh, look, the pace car has crashed into a photographer's stand. Mark Donohue has taken the lead. We're on the race. We can't see what has happened down there. The pace car, out of control, crashed into a photographer's stand. People fell out as if a corn crib had been opened, just tumbling down on the track.
Through divine intervention, nobody was killed in the pace car accident, and the race continued on. Mario qualified top lane of row 3. As it passed by 25 miles, Steve Krisloff had his engine let go, and he spilled oil across the track. Through various caution lights on track, Gordon Johncock and Mario raced hard, not paying attention to him. By the time they got to the stopped car Krisloff, it was far too late.
The courageous people in
Monaco. Oh, and there's Mario Andretti's car, I think.
Mario, yep.
Mario's obviously spun as well. It's obviously been a multi-car accident here due to the original spin. No, it's Gordon Johncock. Gordon Johncock, I think.
Yes, Johncock is car number 7. That's an orange McLaren. That's last year's McLaren car. And there's Johncock over the wall. So we've had Steve Krisloff involved in this. We have had Mario Andretti, Gordon Johncock, and Mel Kenyon, 4 cars involved in this, and it looked like Krisloff started when he hit the wall. Let's get a report now. Chris Economaki has Mario Andretti.
Mario, what happened?
Well, obviously, there was some oil, I think, that was spilled by Kristolov's car, and when we arrived on the scene, the Johncock spun in front of me, hit the wall, and ricocheted into my path, and I was trying to kind of pinch it down close so I won't get into him, but I had nothing I could do.
Thank you very much. Mario Andretti out of the 1971 Indianapolis 500-mile race.
Okay, the green flag is out. They're racing again. I may have said that was Chris Economaki doing the interview. It was actually Dave Letterman. We have 4.
Through the chaos of 1971, Mario came back in 1972, this time with car owner Vel Milik. They qualified middle lane row 2 and ran well all day. Nearing the finish, however, the car sputtered and ran out of gas. He went from a 5th place spot to 8th and DNFing in the pit lane. For 1973, Andretti returned with Milik, and this time, the greatest spectacle of motorsports turned into a wash of water. Mario, in the race that ran on Wednesday, made it only 10 miles before blowing up, letting him get out of the track before the worst was to come that day. 1974 was yet another early dropout, making it only 2 laps until the car detonated. In 1975, driving for Parnelli Jones, Mario qualified an uncharacteristic 27th. It was due to him missing pole day to run his full-time F1 schedule. He did still run the 500 though, making him miss the Belgian Grand Prix that year. As Mario raced, he again didn't make it far, this time crashing out down the backstretch before lap 50.
Cars going down the back straight away. You can see Dolly back taking advantage of the draft as he slingshots past in the smoke. There's a car spinning. It's Mario Andretti. It looks like he's in a mechanical. He's gone into the wall very hard, deep, right onto the grass.
Mario Andretti on the back straight. Hits the wall, and he hits on the left side of the...
As Mario climbed out of his crashed car, IMS radio broadcast icon Sid Collins made a comment in regards to Mario's recent performance at the track. He noted the apparent bad luck Andretti had seen there as of late. Mario now hadn't finished a 500 officially in over 5 years, and only finished inside the top 10 twice during that time. He hadn't even made it past lap 50 since 1972. But in 1976, Mario ran another full year of F1, but again decided to run the 500. This time he chose to run with Roger Penske. Mario did finish the race this time, 8th. However, he didn't complete the full 500 miles. Matter of fact, nobody did. The race ended only 2 laps past lap 100 due to rain plaguing the afternoon. For 1977, Mario qualified 6th and found off time in the F1 schedule to get prepared for Indy. It was all for naught though, blowing up in the Roger Penske 6 car not even past lap 50 again. 1978 again saw Mario find just enough time in his F1 tour to run the Indy 500. In practice, he set an unofficial track record of over 203 miles an hour. It made it seem like he was pole bound. Then it rained, and it made him unable to qualify on pole day. He went back to Europe and won the Belgian Grand Prix, whilst Mike Hess would qualify the car 8th. It didn't matter, however, as by race day, Mario was moved to the rear for driver changes. And by lap 20, Mario was forced to pit again due to a broken coil wire. Overall, he lost 8 laps with the repairs, and the soon-to-be 1978 Formula One World Champion would go back out on track with the injured car to finish 15 laps down. For 1979, Mario officially didn't run the 500, instead opting for the Monaco Grand Prix. It marked the first time Mario would not run the race since 1964, and officially put a decade in between he and his lone Indy 500 victory.
Sits a man who missed the race entirely last year, Mario Andretti of Pennsylvania. Andretti, winner of the race 11 years ago, hasn't finished in the top 5 since then. Last year, he was driving at Monte Carlo on the day of Indy. He returns in car number 12 this year of the Roger Penske team. Like all of the cars in the first 2 rows, it's Cosworth powered.
Mario returned for 1980 and qualified an impressive second. Anticipation had begun to build behind Mario's return, and possibly to win his first race in Indy in over a decade. But during the same lap he lost an engine on in 1977 with Penske, Andretti took the lead. He charged to the front for 10 circuits, but he would drop back and be running third by lap 70. As he went into turn 1 for the next lap, the engine went from its mechanic melody to silence.
38 or 39 gallons of fuel, and there's Mario Andretti. He's going down. He's on the inside of the racetrack. This is not under a yellow. This is not going into the pit. This is a serious blow for Mario Andretti. It looks like he switched off the engine. He's sitting there. That must be going through his mind. Not another mechanical failure.
The machine quit on man yet again for Mario. With yet another sour result, Mario would leave Roger Penske's stable for 1981, venturing the Pat Patrick. For the first weekend of time trials in 1981, Mario wouldn't make a run. Weather polluted the first day, only allowing a few runs to be had. Mario would not be able to qualify, missing the rest of the weekend along with the second week of time trials. It was due to his F1 schedule yet again. And Wally Dallenbach qualified the car in, and Mario would have to drop to the back again for race day.
To understand the size of the crowd, estimated at some 400,000 people here in Indianapolis, you must try to realize that it's almost 3 times as big as the crowd at the Kentucky Derby, more than 5 times as big as the Super Bowl crowd. In fact, it's bigger than many decent-sized cities in this country. They've gathered since 6 o'clock this morning. Many have been up all night. One of the great all-round drivers of his time, former Indy winner, former World Grand Prix champion, Mario Andretti. He had to let another driver qualify his car because of his commitment last week to the Belgian Grand Prix, hence his last row start. There's the green, and they're racing in Indianapolis into the first turn. Bobby Unser. A.J. Foyt has dropped back a little bit. Tony Johncock has moved up with Mike Mosley.
Johnny Rutherford's taken second position. A.J. Foyt's low on the right-hand side of your screen there, but it's Bobby Unser, experienced driver from road racing, really doing very well. Mario Andretti's got himself up to 16th position. An immense achievement by Mario Andretti. Everybody knows that he's a charger, but still, that's pretty impressive.
2 years in a row, and there we have, coming down very low, Mike Mosley, who was in the middle of the first row in the Dan Gurney prepared car, and it looks like that will be the end of the day, Jackie. Heavy in here. He, of course, would be expected to make. What's going on with Rutherford?
He's pulled right off the racetrack. He's gone right very low on the racetrack. He's weaving a little bit there. There must be something wrong with his car.
No question.
Could he be out of fuel, or he should have been coming in for fuel at this time, Jim? It looks like he might have.
Ground effect indeed, and there's the way they stand right now with Rutherford stopped on the race course, the yellow flag out, Bobby Unser the leader, Tom Sneva, Mario Andretti in there, Gordon Johncock and Gordon Smiley.
Here we see a replay of this accident, of what we managed to get here. The car has already collided for the first time with the wall, and that is where I think these spectators have been injured, because look at the pieces. Yeah. Now the car goes on fire. It's a ball of fire. By now it's not only the alcohol that's burning, it's an oil tank that's ruptured, because that's when you can see that flame. Look at these wheels, suspension parts. We were speaking earlier of a deformable structure. I've never seen a race car deform as this one has. It obviously hit the wall at a very acute angle. Can you imagine a race driver is in that car right now? All we can do is hope and pray that he is in good condition. He's certainly in good hands. Let us only hope that the good Lord is looking down upon him with good fortune.
And Unser seemed to have a lot of speed and reserve. Well, he's starting to use some of that right now to catch up with the powerful car of Johncock.
On the racetrack, and he's trying to attempt the pass here right in front of the main grandstand, and he's done it. He's able to go into those corners so much more positively. He comes out with so much to spare. He's not even using all of the road. You can see that demonstrated right here. Look at that.
And with those 2 pit stops done, who leads the Indianapolis 500? Why, it's Mario Andretti, who started in the 32nd or next to last position, and in second place, the Mexican rookie, Jose Garza. Of course, they also have pit stops coming up, and at this moment, they're running 1-2 in the great 500-mile race.
And And there's Bobby Unser low on the racetrack, the right-hand side of your screen, passing Mario Andretti.
He's got him.
Does it? He goes inside the corner again, cutting low and managing to get under Mario Andretti. So Bobby Unser once again showing his ability on the racetrack with a car that certainly seems to be the fastest one on the road. Mario had been bullheaded about it, thinking, oh, we've got
there's another car. That's Gordon
Smiley.
Smiley up against the wall. That's the third car of the same team of John Cock and Andretti. No sign of fire. He does not seem to be frantically moving about, although he is moving. Just kind of detaching his harness, and all the safety people there again.
After contact between Tony Bettenhausen Jr. and Gordon Smiley, caution was out. Race leaders Bobby Unser and Mario Andretti maneuvered down pit lane, and Unser would come out first, Mario trailing behind. The two held low, with Bobby passing 14 cars and slotting in near the front of the field. Mario, meanwhile, couldn't keep up and only passed 2 cars, and slotting in line far behind Unser. Nobody noticed the actions of either driver. Mario, furious that Unser had cheated track position during caution, complained on the radio, but to no avail. After pit stops, Bobby took the green flag with only 2 cars in front. Mario more than a dozen behind. Unser filed away and established a large lead, but Mario drudged through the lappers and chased down the Penske. He sat directly behind Unser on a restart with under 35 to go, and they exchanged the lead, before doing so again in turn 3. Mario soon faded and reported a tire leak, losing time quickly. Gordon Johncock passed by, and then another caution with under 25 to go. Johncock this time took the lead under pit stops. He led briefly before Unser gained the lead back and pulled away. Gordon would fall out of the top 10 with an engine issue, giving Mario a runner-up with under 10 to go. Mario held there as Bobby claimed victory by 5 seconds, enjoying yet another Indy 500. The race wasn't over, however. Not even close. Immediately, talks of a protest began, as Andretti's team began looking for answers for the pit exit incident. As tradition, results would have to be listed at 8 a.m. the next morning, and word of the situation hit Chief USAC race steward Thomas Binford. Binford was immediately interviewed as the situation swelled larger and larger. He obtained video and told Chris Economaki hours after the race that the board will review the situation overnight. The tape Binford would review with the board was one similar that many would watch that night on ABC. At the time, ABC would record live broadcast commentary as the event happened, and then later would record scripted post-event commentary to better suit certain situations. They were able to do this due to the 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time television show window. The production truck would receive word of the impending protest, and went unnoticed live. They made sure everyone knew on the broadcast, however, and scripted in commentary to ensure it was on TV.
And Bobby Unser, also car number 3. So John Cock has made his stop. Now it's their turn. There is Marcia Unser. Right for Bobby, up on the pit counter, as many of the wives are nowadays. There was a time when they simply weren't allowed there. Bobby out again, and Bobby going out he passed a car. What's he doing? Look at that, he's passed about half a dozen cars.
Oh, James, that's
under the yellow, you can't do that.
That is a no-no. He has accelerated probably in the haste of leaving the pit lane. He's certainly overtaken these other cars. I'm not sure why he did that. I know that you're certainly not supposed to do it. The regulations say that under yellow flag conditions you must not pass any other cars, and that certainly has been the case here. He's certainly passed other cars. Right now, of course, they're under the yellow. There you see him in the blue and red car there, blue and yellow car.
But you're supposed to blend into the traffic, right? Let's see if he did that at all.
Yes, you are supposed to leave that pit lane, and if you have to pass a car for other reasons, it's for blending purposes, but certainly he has accelerated all the way down below the double yellow line there and simply overtaken a lot of cars there. I'm sure Bobby must know the regulations. I'm sure he knew what he was doing. Whether his mind was somewhere else, I can't say, obviously, but he shouldn't, in my opinion, have passed these other cars, Jim.
As midnight approached, the race played Unser's naive victory lane interview, ignoring any mention of his move. Soon, it cut to Mario, giving an interview about the situation live in studio. It was the only part of the show that was broadcast live, and they ended the show with stating that they had reached Unser, but he was unavailable to comment. By 8 a.m., the results were released. Mario Andretti had won his second Indy 500.
Tonight, a gala banquet the award ceremony to make it all official. And there were mixed reviews on the judge's decision.
It's difficult. It's difficult to be an official. It's difficult to enforce rules. In fact, I was not at the drivers' meeting where it was all laid out.
I thought it was a crying shame that Bobby Unser won the race clearly and concisely, and they took it away from him. I can't for the life of me understand why all of a sudden they chisel a rule in stone that hasn't been for many years. I really, it just kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
As Andretti went to ceremonies that night, there was little excitement though. Media had swarmed every member they could find of the racing world. On top of surrealness, Mario was given the winner's check envelope and he opened it, finding it empty. He was given the pace car, but not the keys. Mario soon did another live interview, expressing his view on the situation.
Mario Andretti. Mario, 1978, the Italian Grand Prix. You were denied victory because you did essentially the same thing that Bobby Unser did yesterday. Is it that common a practice in racing?
Well, it's not common practice, thank goodness. It's just something that happens. It's very unfortunate because of the experience that I had in 1978. The Italian Grand Prix was very meaningful to me. It was my championship year. It was a sad day because on that particular day, I did clinch the World Championship, but my teammate was killed. And at the same time, after winning the race, they took it away from me because of an infraction at the start. So, like I said, I know how Bobby feels. But what can I say? The rules are there to be obeyed, and if we don't, and nothing is said about it, so obviously everything will be out of control.
As Mario took his odd winnings, Roger Penske was prepping for his own protest. But immediately, USAC shot it down. Roger then went higher, to the USAC Appeals Board, but he did it without the support of his driver. Bobby Unser had been completely dejected about the situation, stating, quote, "It's already been ruined for me. I'm very bitter. I'm not waiting for the decision either. The damage has already been done, and I will paint racing out of my future if I was drawing my future." June 12th marked the first protest meeting as the longest 500 continued. Open Wheel was having their own OJ trial. The meeting was adjourned for reconvening in late July, and debates circled in regards to blend rules for USAC with Bobby and Mario. They each argued the vagueness of the rules. What many were dodging was Mario also committing the violation, along with various others apparently also finding the blind spot in officiating. Mario's alibi, however, was that he was waved by, with one of the drivers being AJ Foyt. This was allowed under USAC rules, but with only AJ claiming that he did it and still one car in question, it only complicated the situation even more. USAC had to make a decision. Everyone left the court meeting after July, and the month passed. August did as well, along with September. As winterization began at the Speedway, a statement emerged from across the street. Based on what we have seen, Thomas Binford and the Indianapolis officials should have detected the infraction at the moment of it. By not penalizing Unser sooner, they automatically made the passes allowed because they failed in their responsibility to detect the infraction. So Unser wins the race, but a $40,000 fine will replace the one position penalty. Andretti is now alone in his dispute, as his car owner had backed out, and he had to go by himself to file another suit. He went to an even higher board, this time saying the previous process favored Unser. He was denied by the beginning of November, and then he went to every race officiating board he could find, but found no sympathy. To this day, Mario Andretti is still the first and only man to lose the Indy 500 twice in a year.
Let's have a look at row number one. Rick Mears, the pole sitter and a former winner on the Roger Penske team, is the fastest qualifier in history. His teammate, Kevin Cogan, second fastest ever in only his second 500. Driving in his 25th 500 is the only four-time winner of the event, the 47-year-old driving legend from Texas, A.J. Foyt. Now in the second row. Mario Andretti looking for another Indy win 13 years after his 1969 victory, driving for Pat Patrick.
For 1982, Mario returned with Pat Patrick. He qualified 4th, officially focused on kart full-time now. On the inside of row 2, he rolled to the green flag for the 66th running of the Indianapolis 500.
Certainly does, Jim. It's very, very hot here. It's in the high 80s and getting hotter steadily. Remember that these drivers have not driven since Thursday here.
Pace car is off the track, but they must await the green flag before the race is underway. Watch the starters platform on the left there. It's still not out. They appear to be in pretty good order in the first 5 or 6 rows at any rate. A little bit ragged towards the back. And look out, a crash before the start of the race. It was Kevin Cogan from the middle of the first row suddenly taking a hard left turn. Tires flying. How in the world could this have happened?
Absolutely no idea, Jim. That's one of the most extraordinary things I've ever seen. Remember, they were going about 130, 140 miles an hour when that started, but there is just no explanation, and now one of the favorites is totally out of the race.
One more time, Mario. I couldn't hear what you said.
I said this is what happens when you have children doing a man's job up front. That's what happens.
Somebody cut right across in front of you.
Yeah, Cogan, you know, just, I guess, messed up and he's sideways in front of me. I just had no choice but T-bone.
Cogan spun right into Andretti before the line, driving replacement for the disgruntled Bobby Unser, who had practically given up on racing after last year's 500 controversies, as that more than likely wouldn't have happened if Bobby was driving the car. Cogan was more inexperienced, but nonetheless, Mario moved to 1983. He left Pat Patrick, and now was with the Newman Haas racing team. Andretti qualified 11th, and was taken out this time by Johnny Parsons, who lost control and spun into Andretti. For 1984, Mario would no longer be the sole Andretti on track. A young 21-year-old Michael Andretti made his first ever start in the 500, driving for the Craco Enterprises team. Mario in qualifying would set a 1-lap qualifying record in his opening lap, and he was flying to set the pole easily. But coming off a turn 4 in his qualifying run, the engine died, and he rolled to the line. P6. Michael would start 4th, the 2 insulating Gordon Johncock in the 2nd row. The 2 on race day stayed in contention, with Mario being faster, leading 29 laps. Eventually, Rick Mears would grab a steady lead of the race, as Mario past the halfway point would have an exhaust issue causing him to pit. After fixing the issue, he continued to the final 50 laps, but on a routine stop, bad luck bit again.
We're sitting by with his wife. Here comes that incident. Now a replay as he's coming into the pits.
Those are Garza in front of him, is it?
Yes, Garza in the white car.
Yeah,
you see,
coming in
Mears is
and
there.
there.
Yeah, there he is.
Couldn't avoid him.
No, he couldn't. That's a shame.
After the incident ended his day, his son Michael would come home an impressive 5th. He would win Rookie of the Race, along with Roberto Guerrero, only the 3rd time the award had been given to 2 drivers. For 1985, Mario would receive the short end of perhaps one of the most iconic moments in all of Indy 500 history.
Nothing has changed. It's still Mario Andretti leading Danny Sullivan at Indy.
This is just past the halfway point. There's a lot of racing yet to do and a lot of fuel calculations. Danny's rush to the front may be a function of his choice to use more boost to get back into the action that Andretti was using. Mario has led for a long time. It may have been his decision to make it kind of a quiet time for him. Both are able to get more than 30 laps to the tank full, which is impressive mileage. But of the 2, Sullivan has been getting more. He got 34 laps to his last tank, Andretti only 31. So despite Sullivan's speed, he's running an economical race.
And that lead is dwindling by the second. Scoreboard showing it a half a second, but it certainly isn't. It's nothing now. Danny Sullivan going down low. Did he make the move? Sullivan down low. Side by side, Sullivan has the lead. Danny Sullivan, and just at that moment, losing control of the car, doing a magnificent job of not hitting the wall and continuing in the race. It's unbelievable.
The incredible move maybe ever in Indianapolis, and Mario didn't hit him, Jim. That's even more incredible. Andretti subtly moving to the side like a fighter, taking a punch but letting it slip by him. Sullivan at 2 200 miles an hour recovering from that spin.
The crowd urging them both on. Mario, 16 years after winning his only Indianapolis 500, was the favorite here today. At age 45, it could be his last chance. And he's got 3 laps to try to get by 2 cars and catch Danny Sullivan of Louisville, Kentucky. The green out. And here they come.
Well, Jim, in that yellow, neither Sullivan nor Andretti pitted. So Andretti's car, they have not been able to change it in any way at all. Sullivan was able marginally to outrun him before. Andretti has already moved by one of the 2 guys he had to pass. He moved by Kevin Kogan, incidentally, his nemesis, the man who put him out of the race at the start several years ago. And now he's breezing by Howdy Holmes. Neither of those men wanted to get in the way of Mario Andretti.
Behind him, Al Unser Sr., who's a lap down and who will be right in this dash had he not been penalized a lap earlier in the race for running over his own air hose in the pit.
That is true.
But Danny Sullivan seems to have that same lead. But how careful he has to be on these last couple of laps.
And I'm one of his greatest fans. This man, Mario Andretti, looks as if he's headed for defeat today. On the day he said he had the best chance ever in his 20 years to win the Indianapolis 500. I feel incredibly for Mario, who put so much work and so much hope into this and is coming up short just a few seconds worth.
The old American hero will lose the race. The new American hero is Daniel John Sullivan III of Louisville, Kentucky, who has won the Indianapolis 500. Mario Andretti finishing second. Roger Penske, the crew chief. Now is the time to celebrate. They didn't budge a muscle until he had crossed the start-finish line, that yard of brick, for the last time.
Danny Sullivan's spin and win is stuff of legend, as he would go on to win that year's 500. Meanwhile, Mario, leading over 100 laps, would be snuffed again by a Penske car. Michael, in his second start, filed in an admirable 8th place, locking 2 consecutive top 10s in his first 2 starts. 1986 was the first year where the younger Andretti would step to the forefront. Coming in, Mario was a favorite to achieve front row starting, but the car failed on pole day, grabbing a decent yet disappointing 5th. Michael, meanwhile, was 3rd, and for the first time was ready to help the Penskes of Danny Sullivan and Rick Mears lead the field into turn 1.
Approach it now out of turn 3 and into the short chute at the north end of the speedway. The chutes are 1/8 of a mile long. The turns amount to 1/4 of a mile. The front straightaway and the back straightaway 5/8 of a mile apiece. And here they come. Most sports events begin. The Indianapolis 500 explodes with the force of collective 25,000 horsepower going into turn 1. Last year, Bobby Rahal jumped into the lead from the outside of row 1, and there goes Michael Andretti making the same move. So as many believe here, Michael Andretti has taken the lead on lap 1. Rick Mears falls into place behind them. The rest of them begin to string out. Michael Andretti with the lead going down the backstretch. He's been here twice before. He has never before led a lap in the Indianapolis 500, and he appears determined to do it right now. They go into turn 3 and through the short chute on the north end of the track. Andretti's still in the lead. Mears behind him in second place. Danny Sullivan has fallen back into a comfortable third place. And now here they come to complete the first lap.
Michael would hold at the front for the opening 100 miles, as his father wouldn't even make it past the opening 20 laps. The car quit on him and he placed 32nd. Going back a little bit, the car Mario was running was a backup due to an awful crash a few days after qualifying in practice. It hurt Mario minorly, but it critically destroyed the car. Michael, meanwhile, dropped back after losing the lead and ended with another top 10 finish. He led the second most laps on the day, only being outscored by race winner Bobby Rahal. As the Andrettis headed into 1987, Mario went into the month of May with perhaps the best car he had ever gotten at the Speedway. He won practically every event there was to win during the month. He easily claimed the pole, borderline won every practice. Hell, he even won the pit stop competition. The Newman-Haas team and Mario were practically dominating the field. Perhaps one of the forgotten wild cards of this team that helped them with their obliteration was the race engineer, a young 28-year-old Adrian Newey. Newey was placed on Mario's crew after successfully designing the March 85C, which later claimed that year's kart championship, along with stealing the 500 from Mario after 360ing in the South End. His car again won in '86 with Bobby Rahal, as he engineered Michael Andretti that day. For 1987, Adrian, along with Paul Newman and Carl Haas, had put everything into this. This was supposed to be Mario's year. And boy, did it look like it was. Mario dominated, explicitly and thoroughly. He had trounced the race, and with less than 50 miles, it was thought to be over. He began riding, lifting off the throttle. The car's mechanical melody changed with the reduced pace, and it began producing an off-pitch note. The harmonics were no longer in rhythm with the design function. An engineer's nightmare. Due to the many moving parts of a motor, a natural occurrence called harmonics are created inside the engine. When designing anything in engineering, especially if it's spinning or moving, you must always account for the frequency that could cause failure in the parts or off balance. You have to avoid it, as in some scenarios it could cause severe failure, or in this scenario, a historic fall.
See, I think that was a glance at Mario possibly starting for the pits. Mario on the right of your screen, he's not starting for the pits.
Oh my goodness, it's happened again.
It has happened.
It has happened again, and you can hear the crowd responding. Lady Luck has reared what is to Mario her ugly head at Indianapolis again.
That shows. Don't count your chickens till they hatch. The bad luck has followed Mario again. This is kind of sad in many ways. Mario is going to feel worse today than he has in probably most of his losses, Jim.
Millions of racing fans prayed only that Mario would get a fair shot, a full run at it. It looked so good for so long, and there now is the leader, and Katie knows it as Roberto Guerrero tries to turn his bridesmaid status into that of a champion.
Mario, at his leisure pace, found that cursed melody. And yet again, everything went wrong. His son had also fallen out early, and in an attempt to find immortality on the board Warner would have to wait yet another year. For 1988, the bad luck and misfortune continued for Mario. He drew first to qualify, with another favorably fast car, but he hit oil dry in turn 4 from an earlier crash that caused him to break traction and put up an unfavorable lap. He did clear the track for every other driver though, and Mario was supplanted from a front row start. With Mario's 4th and Michael's 10th, the two Andrettis took the green, and Mario soon had found an oil leak in the gearbox, along with ignition issues, putting him over 80 laps down and eventually out of the race. Michael, however, grabbed another decent finish in 4th, but he had nothing for Rick Mears, being 2 laps down to him on pace. For 1989, both Andrettis had found each other at Newman Haas finally, and for the first time, Michael finally got a taste of his father's curse. He blew an engine from the lead, whilst Mario would also have the lead and experience his own mechanical issues as well. It now had marked 20 years of the horrid curse, and Mario was entering his 50s. Michael had now officially built a name for himself entering the 90s, and with the Andretti name moving to the top of the motorsports world, the aura of a 500 win hung heavier and heavier with each passing year.
Indy, 1969, the front row. In practice, Mario Andretti had burned his face, and standing in for him in this picture is his twin brother Aldo. It was the closest Aldo would ever come to driving the 500. Mario won the 500 that year as Aldo watched and cheered. Aldo loved racing as fiercely as Mario and shared Mario's dreams, just not his luck. 3 months after Indy, Aldo in a sprint car. It was at a dirt track in Des Moines. The impact broke virtually every bone in his face.
I was prepared for the worst, and I saw the worst. You know, it's shocking, of course. And when it's there, one of your own blood, you know, that's, you know, it's sometimes devastating, really.
In Aldo's family, 5 children. His third oldest, John, fell in love with racing early, but at his father's insistence, attended college, insurance against the uncertainties of the sport. John, at racetracks before he could walk, had grown up with his father's love of racing, but also, because of what had happened to his father, John knew firsthand how harsh the sport can be.
One day you're a hero, the next day a zero, and, you know, the climb up is much longer and harder than the fall. The fall is always very short and very quick, and you better have something to back yourself up with in case that happens. When I sit in the race car, I don't sit in the race car because I'm racing for Dad. You know, you set your goals to come to Indy, and once you achieve that, you want to win Indy. And if I can accomplish that, then that one will probably be for Dad.
1990 would mark a celebration for Mario. It was his 25th start at the 500-mile sweepstakes. He, along with his son Michael, started in row 2, and both, however, would not see the finish. Mario was out on lap 60, and then Michael would be out 90 laps after. Whilst the two had nothing to write home about, they weren't the only Andrettis in the field that day. In between them on the finishing grid was a third Andretti, John. John in 1990 was driving for Porsche, and had made 2 other starts previously in the 500. In 1989 he started 12th, but was out by lap 60 with engine issues. In 88 he finished 27th, and also had engine issues, finishing 21st. For his first 3 starts, all came with different teams. Mike Curb in 88, Vince Granatelli in 89, the son of Andy Granatelli, the man who owned Mario's 69 Victor car. Up through 1990, John was standing in the shadows of his uncle and cousin. But for 1991, he would emerge from him, driving the VDS Racing 4. John would claim a top 5 in the race, and he would also beat Mario, who started 3rd and finished 7th. But Michael would still best him, finishing 2nd to the legend Rick Mears. Michael during that day in 1991 led 97 laps, and had perhaps one of the all-time battles in Indy 500 history.
This race traditionally changes in the last 10 laps. We're approaching that area now. The green flag is back out, and Rick Mears comes around John Andretti. He's no factor whatsoever, but Michael is right there with him. Michael moving to the outside. Can he keep in the high groove? He did it in Phoenix. Can he do it here? Michael Andretti takes the lead away from Rick Mears. Wow!
That's one of the toughest passes I've ever seen. A short shoot pass with 2 cars running nearly the same speed. I'll just bet you that Rick Mears thought that would have been impossible, and I just can tell you, he never, ever looked for Michael to go that way.
That is sheer virtuosity by Michael Andretti, Bobby. Don't you agree? That was an incredible
That was one of the finest pieces of driving, one of the hardest pieces of driving I've seen. And Sam, it's very difficult to pass somebody on the outside like that, and especially a car that's just as bad.
And from Bobby Under's point of view, a position on the track that he was not expected. But here is Rick Mears now in the same position as Mears, who has been driving a very clear line. This race takes Michael Andretti 187 laps into the record book. The fight is at the front.
Our hats off to him now. If you ever see racing better than that, I'd certainly like to know where it's going to be.
The two exchanged incredible moves on one another late, with Michael getting another shot after Mario stalled late from a top 10 spot. It became meaningless though, as Michael still couldn't overcome Rick, and again the Andrettis were beaten by a Penske. 91 did, however, mark the first year 4 Andrettis ran the race. Michael's brother Jeff would run his first 500 that year, coming home 15th. It was disappointing, however, as with 4 shots in the field, they all came up short. While up to this point it seemed that misery was aplenty for the Andrettis at the 500, nothing would even match what would happen in 1992. Again, the quartet of Andrettis took to the speedway. Mario, the patriarch, experienced the first issues of the day for them. It started with a misfire, taking him off pace. After that was fixed, the team put tires in the car, but cross-threaded one of the wheels. After that issue was fixed, Mario would have to fight through a myriad of cautions caused by the cold temperatures of the day. It caused for the track to be incredibly greasy, and due to this, restart crashes were aplenty. Sadly, Mario would not be excluded from this issue.
Flies on the 82nd lap of the Indianapolis 500. And look at, oh, and another car, and that's Mario.
This involves Mario Andretti. You see him moving over toward the pit wall on the inside. Mario Andretti.
Well, that's been more like a war zone today than it has been a race.
He would lose control, and the 52-year-old Andretti was hurt. He had broken his toes. He was taken from the speedway immediately, whilst his son Michael sat in the lead, unaware of the pain his father was going through. As the race went back green, Michael proceeded his whipping of the competition, but more misery was still to come. Back in the hospital, past halfway, Mario was in there watching the race, being diagnosed with multiple broken toes. It wasn't life-threatening, but he was about to be put under for surgery. But right before that could occur,
all under the green, that's bad time.
Jeff Andretti catches the wall, this time several laps back into the green flag. Driving A.J. Foyt's car.
Oh, Gary Bettenhausen, who just talked about his run, a fine run.
Look at the tire on the left, still rotating, still rolling down the track. The debris is still early.
And once again, these safety crews who have worked far, far too much today are huddled around another car, and this time it belongs to Jeff Andretti.
It's an A.J. Foyt entry.
Mario Andretti's youngest son.
Yep.
12 cars have been sidelined by accidents, and we're just past the halfway point in the Indy 500. So a race riddled with accidents and a very strange start. We'll be back.
His son Jeff had broken a wheel hub, sending him head-on to the barrier. The tire flew off and hit Gary Bettenhausen, taking him out of the race as well. Bettenhausen was at least able to escape, but Jeff was hurt, and bad. Every lap that went by under caution, Michael saw his older brother slowly taken from his car, watching the process like a slideshow. Mario, meanwhile, sat in pain, physically and emotionally now. The only thing he could wonder was if he had just lost his son. Before Mario could be given an answer on his son's condition, he was put under for surgery. Michael, still in the lead, had a race to win, and he pushed through the torture of emotion. He went to the final 200 miles, and the final 50 laps, and now he was quickly approaching the family goal, the dream that so many members of his family has pushed for, and one that he's thinking about could have just taken his brother. Michael kept pushing. He passed by the lap that his father's ill-fated Harmony claimed his '87 dreams, now held steady over the rival family's second-generation driver Al Unser Jr. As Michael approached lapping the patriarch of the rival family, the car sputtered, and then nothing.
In the Indy 500, and Michael is slowing. Michael is slowing. The rest of the field is coming past. Michael Andretti is slowing down. Al Unser Jr. will take the lead as Michael Andretti slows down at Indianapolis. An unbelievable turn of events. The man who has dominated this race on the 189th lap. Suddenly the car slows and Michael appears to be done.
Well, that is another Andretti thing. It's sad for Michael. I have never seen a race driver in my life that deserves this race more than Michael Andretti, and he isn't even going to make it back to the pits.
There come the leaders, first and second. Al Unser Jr., Scott Goodyear.
The fuel pump had just failed. Michael sat in the coasting car, hearing silence around the track. 160 laps led, and all he had for it was torment. To add to the torture, it didn't even make it back to the pits. Michael sat stalled. Another year where the Andretti Curse struck all of them. Hours later, in the hospital, Mario awoke. The first question he asked to a nurse was, "Did Michael win?" She hesitated before saying, "No." Instead, second-generation driver Al Unser Jr. won the race. Mario would later go on to say that this day, Sunday, May 24th, 1992, was the worst day of his life.
Did you think you had a chance?
No, not really. You know, Michael had us covered all day, and the Ford Lola cars were just outrun us bad all day, and so, you know, the best we could do was best in class, and
there's a lot of. Sounds like there's some tears in your voice right now.
Well, you just don't know what Indy means.
Alain Prost in pole position for the 6th time in 6 races. But watch Michael Schumacher when the lights turn to green. And Ayrton Senna, who's a super starter. Damon Hill's got Ferrari's Charger, Jean Alesi right behind him. Then it's Patrese Benetton, Berger's Ferrari and Wendlinger's Sauber. Michael Andretti starts 9th for his first Monaco Grand Prix.
Jeff Andretti is starting his 3rd race inside row 6. During last year's Indy 500, a wheel came off of Jeff's car, sending him nearly head-on into the wall. With his father's help, Jeff struggled back with his goal to drive in this year's race.
Well, Jeff Andretti, we just saw that video, the horror that you experienced a year ago. During all the months of the painful recuperation, rehabilitation, did you ever think you'd get another opportunity to challenge this racetrack again?
Well, I wasn't quite sure that I'd get an opportunity, but I was really thankful that the Pagan Racing team thought enough of me to give me another chance to at least show that I could still do it.
Well, we certainly hope that it's a safe one today, but regardless of how it comes out, this is already a great success story. Have a good one.
Thank you.
For 1993, Michael had left America, running Formula One. 3 Andrettis were left to run the 500 that year. Mario Andretti was leading the charge with a second-place qualifying effort. And again, he led a race-high 73 laps. This would all come before he would enter a closed pit and be penalized, putting him back through the field. He was never able to recover and ended 5th. John would get another top 10 that day, and Jeff Andretti would return. Sadly, he was once again taken out in another crash, however. Ironically, the crash that Jeff would be involved in was the one that caused the same caution that Mario put under the closed pit. Thankfully, all the Andrettis walked away from the speedway that day, and 1994 would be their next focus. It was the end of an era, and perhaps the start of a new one. Mario had announced during that year that he was stepping away from full-time racing, making this possibly his last 500. Michael would return, however, after his little escapade in Europe, and now all 4 Andrettis were ready to take to Indy again. It didn't work out as planned, though. Jeff DNQ'd, and Mario in his last attempt only made it 23 laps, finishing 32nd. It marked a miserable ending to a cursed career at the track. But for John and Michael, they both again got top 10s, not ever really being in the race, but they still had the decent runs. Now, this would not be the end of the Andrettis at the Oval in 1994. As a matter of fact, there would be another race that year.
Here he is in the 4th turn. This is his final trip around turn number 4. And Jeff Gordon is about to write his name in the racing history books. Years from today, when 79 stock car races have been run here, we'll remember the name. Jeff Gordon, winner of the inaugural Brickyard 400.
For the first time in 70 years, another race was held on the Oval, Jeff Gordon winning it. John Andretti ran the race as he was competing in the Full Cup Series circuit at the time. He qualified 28th. That's where he finished as well. For 1995, Michael Andretti was the lone Andretti in the Indy 500 that year. He qualified 4th and led a strong 45 laps. He would, however, be snake-bitten yet again. Whilst leading, he touched the turn 4 wall and damaged his car. It was to the point that he could no longer be able to compete. Heartbreak followed the Andrettis in not only the 500 that year, but in the 400-mile effort as well. John put up possibly his best race of his Cup season at that point. He would lead on and off all day, and in the end he would finish 12th. Whilst it doesn't seem bad, he was the last man Dale Earnhardt passed that day to win the race. 1995 also marked something else, the end of Andretti's in the 500 possibly. For 1996, no Andretti's would take to the Indy 500. This was of course due to the infamous IRL kart split, dragging Michael over to Michigan, where he would crash out early there. For the first time since 1979, no Andretti would run the 500. But an Andretti would still run the Oval. John again took to the Brickyard 400, finishing 19th. He had a casual run. 1997 was a repeat for the 500. But again, John ran the 400, 17th. 1998, John put up his best run of 7th. In 1999, however, on the 30th anniversary of his uncle's victory there, John would finish a worst 37th in his career there, driving an STP car, just like Mario did when he won there. Now 3 decades had passed. Michael was starting to close on the end of his career, and whilst he hadn't raced there in half a decade, the efforts to try and win that race were about to change.
ABC Sports presents the Indy Racing League. Today, the greatest spectacle in racing, the Indianapolis 500. And we've gotten a break in the weather. It has rained a good part of the week and poured yesterday afternoon, but right now, cloudy skies, very slight chance of rain, but not until later this afternoon. The temperature is 62 degrees and 400,000 to look on. Good morning, everyone. I'm Al Michaels, and you know the temples of sport are easily identified. Yankee Stadium, Wembley Stadium, Churchill Downs, Madison Square Garden. They are to sport what Buckingham Palace and the Palace of Versailles are to royalty. And so welcome to the unquestioned shrine of motor racing, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. This is where the kings of racing are crowned, and for the last few decades, the royal names have been Foyt, Andretti, Unser, Penske. But this sport had its own palace revolt 6 years ago, and with the armies marching off in different directions. But for now, however, all the kings and all the kingsmen are back together again, and the populace couldn't be happier.
And Michael Andretti comes back to Indianapolis and is now the leader of the race. He pitted on lap 20, so he is out of sequence with everybody else. However,
as Vince Welch told us in the time just before the green flag, that could be a smart decision to pit out of sequence, because really that's a good way for those who started at the mid or rear of the pack to move up toward the front.
Michael Early drives to the front of the field and takes the lead past lap 50. On and off he battles, and again takes the lead on lap 103. With caution for rain, they are past the midway point, and this could be it. Michael might finally have the 500 in his hands. All he needs is for it to rain.
A moment ago, and now they have made the decision, yes, we are going to bring him in this lap. They said the sprinkle should go south of the racetrack, and they're hoping that they can bring him in this time by and make a pit stop and not worry about the weather. Get this thing completed to 200 laps.
Well, he has pitted 24 laps ago. That means if they go green, he can only run another 5, 6, 7 laps. So he really, you know, that's a real crapshoot. If you know it's going to rain, it's one thing, but they're just not real sure.
Zero, fuel position
There is Michael Andretti making the left turn onto pit road, and so he relinquishes the lead here on the 109th lap of the race.
The sky is clear, and Michael fades to third by the finish. Like father, like son. He loses to Penske cars, right during the 20-year anniversary of the 1981 500 debacle. While there have been 20 revolutions around the sun, Bobby Hunter still hadn't forgotten about the incident between he and Mario, breaking a 16-year friendship over one day. For the 400 in the fall, John finished a modest 14th, nothing really to write home about. For 2002, Michael finished 7th, being mired mid-pack most of the day. John in the 400 was the only one to lead laps that year, claiming one circuit in order to his 26th place finish. For 2003, Mario would make a return to Indianapolis headlines, but perhaps it was for almost the worst reason possible.
The 63-year-old walked away from one of the most dramatic crashes in history. Here it is. Andretti was on the final run of the day, only seconds behind Kenny Breck in turn 1. Breck crashed coming out of the turn. Mario came up on the accident while running at 220 miles an hour, and he hit some debris. And then he held on. He rode out one spectacular crash. Mario walked away with only a nick on his chin about the size of a penny. And I caught up with Mario's son, Michael, right after the accident. As a son, this has just got to be horrifying.
Yeah, it was, what a shame. I mean, he was doing really well. Everything was really positive, and then, you know, this happened. And, it's a bummer, you know. He's just no one's fault, you know. He's just victim of circumstances, so it was a real shame.
There had been rumors that maybe Mario would make a return to IndyCar, to run the 500 again, to try and finally claim it. But after this flip, after this scare, after this near-death experience, that ended his competitive days. Michael getting into owning a team would borderline refuse to put Mario in any competitive car. He was scared for his father. Thus, the Speedway not only cursed Mario for 40 years, it ended his racing career. Speaking of ending racing careers, Michael was now 40 years old, and he was ready to move over to being a full-time owner. 2003 would be advertised as his last start, and many thought that this would finally be it. He qualified 13th, and quickly drove towards the front. He claimed the lead from Scott Dixon and led for 18 laps, trying to close in on his dream. He would lose the lead, but eventually fight it back before falling before halfway due to mechanical issues, ultimately ending his 500 career. Just like his father, miserable. There was no triumph, no jubilation, just disappointment. To make matters worse, John Andretti in the 400 would crash out and finish dead last that year as well, driving an 81 for DEI, possibly the best ride he ever had there. For 2004, in either the 500 or 400, and Andretti didn't run. Well, technically. None were on track in person, but cars owned by Michael, being 4 of them, ran the race. They finished 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 14th. For 2005, it was the same thing, except this time, Dan Weldon, driving for Andretti, won the Indy 500. It was a monumental moment. Dan was becoming an elite driver for the team, and was a favorite to win the title that year. And Michael recounted in victory lane after the race saying, quote, "No more curse." Being caught up in jubilation after that, Michael decided to come out of retirement that year to run the 500 in 2006. It was also due to the fact that his son Marco was pegged to make his first start in the 500 that year. Excitement was finally swelling the Andretti family at the Speedway. What was unknown to them was the curse wasn't dead. It was lying dormant. And Michael's statement had just made it more alive than ever.
Oh yeah, I never had a sip of that. I need a sip. Never tasted milk so good. It was awesome. What a day. Dan drove a hell of a race. Whole Jim Green, Flying Tools guys did a great job. I finally won the Indy 500.
Yeah, welcome to Victory Lane, my friend.
Oh yeah, no more curse.
4 laps, 10 miles, 1 qualifying run. Davey, that's all that separates Michael Andretti 10 miles from winning the Indianapolis 500 in his 15th start.
Michael and rookie Marco race on. They stay on the lead lap all day. Two are battling with Penske driver Sam Hornish Jr. It comes down to the final 20 laps. Caution comes out for the 14 of Felipe Giafone. Late stops ensue under 10 laps. And through a miracle, Michael Andretti has maintained the lead. He leads on the restart with 4 laps to go. 10 miles. Maybe he won't be like his father. Maybe he can actually go out on top.
1 and 2. Down the front straight, the Vonage car in front, and he's going to take the lead into turn number 1 with Andretti green cars around him.
Michael Andretti, but now Marco's got to work his way around Ryan Herta if he wants to get to his dad. Michael Andretti heads the field into turn 2.
And the man on the move is going to be Sam Hornish Jr. He gets around the lap machine of Max Pappas. He now rides 4th in line, continuing to lead though. Michael Andretti to turn 3.
Michael Andretti gets to turn 3 first. Marco Andretti works his way around Brian Herta. He's going to try to reel in Dad, already in the short chute in the north end.
It is 1 and 2, Dad and son, Michael and Marco Andretti. Marco goes low, about 4 car lengths behind his dad, Michael Andretti.
3 laps will remain for Michael Andretti. 7.5 miles to realize the dream. Here goes Marco Andretti, side by side. He's going to make the pass and wide.
Marco Andretti has crossed his dad, Michael. Marco leads the field into the southeast corner.
Hey, Dad, watch this. Marco Andretti to the inside, and now Michael going to lose the 2nd position. Sam Hornish Jr. pulls up alongside. They're battling for the runner-up spot to turn 3.
Michael pedaling for all it's worth, trying to hold on to 2nd. Not going to be able to do it. Hornish jumped in front of him. Meanwhile, Marco roars away on the north end.
19-year-old Marco Andretti exiting turn 4. The fans on their feet. He's got a 15-car length lead over Sam Hornish Jr.
The 3rd generation of the Andretti family to race here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. 2 laps away from a win in turn number 1.
Here comes Sam, though. He is closing up on Marco Andretti, about 5 or 6 car lengths back into turn 2.
You can visually see him closing the gap. Sam Hornish Jr. has battled adversity throughout the day. He's trying to get the lead in Indy. He pulls up on the rear wing of Marco Andretti.
Nobody is seated. Fans on their feet. Hornish all over Marco Andretti. Almost goes into the pit lane. Marco slams the door, holds the lead by 5 car lengths.
Marco Andretti in the short chute. That lead is about 10 car lengths over Sam Hornish Jr. He's down the front straightaway, trying to get the win.
The white flag is out at the world's greatest race course. 19-year-old Marco Andretti, now less than 2 miles away from winning the 90th Indianapolis 500.
More left-hand turns, and Marco Andretti has crunched the lead. He heads into the 2nd corner.
What a headline it's going to make. Marco Andretti wins in his debut in Indianapolis. He has a 7-car length advantage midway down the backstretch for the final time.
Coming up on the scene at which he may have won the race last time by. They're waving bandanas, waving hats. Cut the left turn for racing immortality for 19-year-old Marco Andretti.
And Sam Hornish Jr. right on the tail of Marco Andretti. Can a teenager win in Indianapolis?
Here's the finish. Sam Hornish Jr. makes the pass. He'll win it. Sam Hornish Jr. goes to the inside of Marco Andretti and wins it in the final 100 yards. Sam Hornish Jr. has won the 90th Indianapolis 500 in an incredible finish. Perhaps one of the closest finishes in history at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. 63 thousandths of a second as Sam Hornish Jr. has beaten Marco Andretti.
It wasn't with 50 to go, or 20, or even 10. It was with 200 feet to go that yet again the Andrettis lost. 37 years, and still the Andretti last name has been cursed at the Speedway. Perhaps the spite the Speedway showed Michael after what had happened reignited him, and he returned with his son the following year in 2007. But it was simply a trick. He didn't go out by almost winning the race. He went out by being borderline irrelevant. He finished 11th after leading a single lap during pit strategy. Marco, meanwhile, had yet again another fast car, qualifying 9th and leading 13 laps. During those 13 laps, the track was hit by moisture, possibly finally giving Marco a chance at victory. But again, it cleared and the race went back green, just like in 01. As Marco fought for 500 gold past lap 160, the curse struck yet again.
Jack, what's going on? Oh no, another crash and it's upside down. We've got a car upside down. It's Marco Andretti. 2 cars at least involved in this. Buddy Rice as well. Buddy was taken out last year in a crash with Elio. This year, a crash with Marco.
And Marco, you okay?
Ironically, the caution that Marco flipped in would end the race, giving Dario Franchitti the win. A team car. But not an Andretti. Michael could have gone out with the miracle that was the 06 finish. While they didn't win, it was beautiful. But now, he went out like this. His son upside down. John Andretti also ran the 500 in 07 but finished 30th. In 2008, Marco during practice set the fastest lap of the month, but then he only qualified inside row 3. He stayed competitive, however, and past halfway found himself racing Tony Kanaan, a teammate. He sent it low on Kanaan and unsettled Tony's car, causing a wreck. Marco received brutal criticism from this, but the race continued. Later he was battling at the front, and the team decided to make an adjustment on the car, which made it drastically worse. It put Marco far off, and he was only able to fight back to 3rd. Meanwhile, John Andretti finished 16th. In 2009, Marco didn't even make it a lap.
Flag in hand, but we haven't seen it yet. Yes, now we're green in Indianapolis. Oh, we've got a crash in the short chute. 2 cars into the wall, and it looks like one of them might be Marco Andretti. Taking a look right now, trying to see who that is.
Boy, we talked about this. You have to get through the first turn and the first lap because you have to finish here if you have a shot at winning. The emotions inside those drivers' cockpits right now are just crazy.
The only other thing to note of that year was that John Andretti finished 19th for Richard Petty. Yes, Richard Petty in the Indy 500. In the Brickyard, he got 32nd for Bob Jenkins. For 2010, it was a fuel mileage race, where Marco got 3rd after coasting around passing other cars running out of gas. John meanwhile got 30th again. In 2011, Marco was nearly bumped from the field, getting on a buzzer beater knocking out team car Ryan Hunter-Reay. Even when Marco does something clutch at the Speedway, he does it at the disappointment of an Andretti, that being his father losing a car. During the actual race, he really wasn't a factor, finishing 9th. John, meanwhile, that year got 22nd. 2012 saw Marco's fastest car since perhaps 2006. He qualified inside row 2 and led over 50 laps, staying near the front most of the day. However, while he was leading, his throttle foot melted to the pedal, causing issues inside the cockpit. He fought through it as best as he could, but by the end of the race, he finally gave and hit the wall, damaging it, finishing an abysmal 24th. 2013 was again one of the races where Mario was at the front. After leading 31 laps, he was found in 4th on the final restart, and unable to make any charge before Dario Franchitti's crash. For 2014, Marco ran at the front yet again, leading 20 laps and battling inside 20 to go. However, he would fall in the shadows of Helio Castroneves and Ryan Hunter-Reay. The two would pull away and battle to the checker flag, Ryan becoming victorious. In 2015, Marco was borderline irrelevant, with a 6th place finish, far behind the Chevrolets. In the 100th running, team car Alexander Rossi would win as a rookie. Marco's team struggled with putting the front tires on correctly, resulting in a 13th place run. On a 6-car Andretti team in 2017, Marco was again irrelevant, getting 8th, as team car Takuma Sato won. In 2018, he switched to the Andretti sister car number 98, but again was a non-factor. On the 50th anniversary of his grandfather's win, Marco started 10th, and again fell back and was completely irrelevant, finishing 26th. During the plague season in 2020, Marco stunned everybody and won the pole. However, for the only time in Indy 500 history, he didn't get to celebrate it in front of anybody. Only empty bleachers. On top of that, IndyCar would put Michael and Mario in the two-seater IndyCar to lead the field to the green. While jubilation filled the Andretti family in this situation, Marco sat leading the field in the pace laps unhappy. It was due to an engine swap done on carb day, which saw the speed in the car lost. Marco insisted they change it back for the old engine, but the crew said there was no difference. Marco, extremely adamant about the difference, again emphasized that while it would garner a grid penalty, he believed it would make them the best car again. They didn't listen, and Marco led the field to green, but never led a lap. He finished a boring 13th. 2021 was another year of irrelevance for Marco, 19th. 2022, Marco finally led laps for the first time since 2014, a total of 13 on the late cycle. He fell back to 22nd, however, and continued to be a non-factor. And now we are in the present, 54 years away from the last time an Andretti stepped foot in victory lane. Many theorize where this curse comes from, and the most legible and accepted theory comes from the press legend Robin Miller, who states that it began in 1970 when Andy Granatelli and Clint Bronner were fighting over the team. Mario was looked at for the tie-breaking decision. He sided with Andy. Bronner's wife walked away angrily, with his wife casting a hex on Mario, stating that an Andretti will never win the race again. And so far, that's been true. But perhaps winning as a team owner is enough. But some argue the curse has been dead for nearly 20 years, since Dan Weldon won in an Andretti car in 2005. But others say that doesn't count, that it's not an actual Andretti. And perhaps that's true. Maybe all the Andretti Autosport wins is a sick way that the track tortures the Andretti family. Yeah, you win the 500 as an owner, but you watch as others do what you can't. For Michael, you become a pathway for others to immortalize themselves on the Borg Warner, to cast their legacy. But you remain faceless, being one of the greatest American open-wheel drivers to never claim a spot on the Borg Warner. And for Marco himself, he only runs the 500 now in IndyCar, being the last remaining shot for the family, the last hope to finally end the Andretti curse.
If the Granatellis and the Andrettis aren't the happiest families in racing, then God didn't make little green apples, and it don't rain in Indianapolis in the summertime. The executive producer of ABC's Wide World of Sports is Roone Arledge. The coordinating producer, Jim Spence. Indianapolis 500 produced by Chet Forte and directed by Lou Volpicelli. U.S. Open Preview produced and directed by Fred Hutchison. Our associate director at Indianapolis was Don Ohlmeyer. Remember, next Saturday on ABC's Wide World of Sports, live from France, the 24 Hours of Le Mans Automobile Racing Classic. Also next Saturday here on ABC, the U.S. Open Golf Championship from Houston. For now, this is Jim McKay, along with Roger Ward and Chrissy Katamaki, saying so long from Indianapolis. Air travel arrangements for ABC's Wide World of Sports made through United Airlines, who also furnished promotional consideration. Today's program was pre-recorded.